I'm Dan Galusha, and welcome to another edition of Dan's Fishing Tales. Well, it's that time when the ice starts getting really bad and you take out your equipment and you put some of your open water equipment in, and that's what I've been doing. But recently I was invited to be at an event that was called Learn to Ice Fish, and it took place at Scott County Park in Iowa. And along with Dylan Lawson, who is also a fellow Vexilar Pro Staff member, as well as B&M poles, kicking bass, I think of them all, TTI-Blakemore without a doubt, because we also had Rich Ian there. And Rich, of course, is on the crappie side of things, where Dylan, he's a professional catfish tournament angler. And me, I'm everything in between on it. So I fish for the bass, the crappie, the bluegills. If it's going to jerk a line, that's what I'm fishing for. So I kind of cover everything with TTI and Blakemore that way. But anyway, these guys were with me too. And basically, Dylan and I were there to show how to use the depth finders and the flashers that we have, the Vexilar flashers. He was using the bottom of the line, the FL8, where I was using the top, the FLX30. So we kind of covered the gap right there. And Rich, he showed up earlier to help drill holes and even lay out all the rods and everything that was there. Anyway, what I'm going to do is be showing you some photos of it and tell you a little bit about it while we go along here. It was organized by one of the rangers out of Scott County Park, and there's a whole group of parks within the Scott County Conservation Department, but Scott County Park itself, that's where Brad Taylor is based. And Brad was the one that organized it because it took place on Pride Lake. And Brad gave a talk before the thing took place to everybody that was there. We had 75 people show up. This is the first time I've ever done it. So, I mean, that was really a great turnout, and they decided that they're going to have it even again later on for now, like the following years. And it may go back and forth between the other parks, such as Westlake Park. They have had a big lake restoration there. But they're going to have it there, and then they'll have it at Scott County Park. I kind of go back and forth with that. And speaking of Westlake Park, Brandon Rogala was Brad's assistant. And Brandon, he helped out quite a bit there too. I mean, he was doing everything just like, well, like Brad. I mean, he just didn't stand around and watch. He was out on the ice too, because the idea is we had beginners, a lot of kids were there, and also some adults, and we had a lot of questions on the depth finders, and they had tents set up out there, the shelters. One of them had a live scope inside of it so people could sit there and watch, but I'll tell you, the fishing was so tough that it was extremely hard to locate a fish. I was helping out a little guy that he came with his mother, and they fished, and he got a hold of a couple. I seen that there were some fish down there, and he got a hold of them, but he lost them. I think he was too worried about getting home and playing a couple of video games, and his poor mother, she finally said, "Boy, my feet are getting cold." People, I've got a tip for you. Don't go on the ice with tennis shoes and think you're going to sit there for a while, because it's going to get cold. And I had not noticed that that's all she had on there. And that's another thing that Brad told everybody too at the beginning, is ice fishing safety. The ice has not been good. We were just lucky that we got a real cold snap. It made it solid enough. We got like 7 inches, but there were still a few iffy spots, and he told everybody we're not to go. And it was warm enough, it was 47 degrees, and things were starting to melt, and it is now. We had snow out here, and it's gone. And and we're going to have heavy rain, so the ice is done. There's no doubt about it right now. But another thing that we were out there doing, now Dylan is not on the Jiffy Pro staff where I am. We were demonstrating some of the Jiffy products. One of them was the E6 drill, which I've got. That's the electric drill. And I got a story about that here in just a little bit, and I'll show you a photo. But anyway, another one was the Scout. And the Scout is for ice fishing safety. That's for drilling down, and I've done videos in the past. You can see them there. And you drill that down there, and you can see what it is. It has a gauge right on the side. You just hook up on the ice, and you know how deep it is, or how thick it is, I should say. And then if you have a 2-inch or less round transducer, it'll work as a transducer hole as well. Just so happens that the FLX 30, it won't fit the hole. You might be able to clean that hole out, and that's kind of hard to do because you're not going to have a dipper that's going to go in there. Anyway, Dylan and I, we were demonstrating both of those, and he was also demonstrating the K-drill. And while he was doing that, the fishing was so tough that he was using it for 2 purposes. He was demonstrating how to drill a hole, and he was going to locate some fish, hopefully, in that hole with his FL8. But I was telling you about the little boy. He came out with his sister, and I'm going to have a story about her here in a bit too and show you some photos. He came out with his sister and his parents, and they were late. They were right towards the end. A lot of the people were already leaving. And his fascination was that drill. So Brandon Rogala and the little boy's dad, they helped him drill a hole. And boy, that made his day. I don't think he cared if he ever caught a fish. Well, the little girl did want to catch a fish, and it's the first time she'd ever been fishing. Not just first time ice fishing, but first time fishing, period. So I really wanted her to catch a fish. And it being that, you know, her first time like that is going to be her first fish, her parents wanted the same, and I thought, okay, most of the people are leaving. A lot of them were fishing in these other areas. They weren't doing all that good. There was one little girl that I'll show you a photo here. She probably caught one of the biggest bluegills caught, and she was one that Dylan was helping out with his locator. Anyway, back to the one that I had. They were sitting in, the little boy and the little girl were just watching that depth finder like crazy. And I took them over towards some laydowns that were on the other shore. And I knew the ice was safe enough there because we'd kind of checked out, and we'd seen where people had drilled holes, not that day, but prior to that, where they'd been fishing. And I thought, you know, you're just not getting them out here in this deeper water that just didn't seem like it had anything. So I'm going to take her to the laydowns. Well, I did. And hit one hole, and nothing. And another hole, there was some, but she just didn't get anything. Another hole, and she hooked one. Lost it. So something had happened with this reel, because they provided these little plastic side reel type things, you know. Well, somebody at some point had reeled it up so that the line had got caught in the back. Well, I hadn't been watching what had taken place on that. We were just dropping the jig in. We were using a custom Jigs and Spins diamond jig with a wax worm on it. And the wax worm got torn up pretty good when she set the hook on the one and lost it. Well, that line wrapped around the back had broken. Now, she really didn't have any line that was even attached to that rod. So I told her, I said, I have a problem here. And I drilled another hole and dropped the transducer down there. And there was I know it was picking up a limb from one of the laydowns, and I could see it vibrating like this with just kind of an orangey color. I thought, okay, there's a fish right around that limb. And dropped it down there, and bam, she got about a 12-inch bass. And that little girl was sharp enough to say, I think we're going to have to bring this in by hand. And she was right. You did. There was no way. If she'd have pulled it, the line had come right off. And there she was, and I was helping her. And she caught her first fish, which was that 12-inch bass, and I was really happy with it. And her folks, I think her folks were happier than she was, although her mother sent me a text later and said that she was so excited that she had to tell her grandparents and wanted to take the photo and send it to all of her friends. So she did. Anyway, that's what we did there. Like I said, there was a lot of people. There were shelters out there, but most of the shelters were our shelters where we were showing them around. We had a Frabill shelter set in there. We had our tackle laying out there. I had all my Frabill rods and my cases and everything that I normally have so that they could see what they could be using. And it all just worked great. The weather was super. The wind did pick up to probably around 25, 27 miles per hour, I think, was the highest wind. But it was one of these winds that went down and up and down and up. And early in the morning, it was pretty doggone cool, I will say that. When the guys were first getting ready there, were Rich and Dylan, you can see them in that one photo there, that Rich and Dylan's off to the left and Brandon's in the middle getting everything put on that he had. And Rich had already been out there drilling before that, so he was coming around there. And there was just a lot of stuff that took place there. Oh, also Pepsi, they provided some hot dogs and some chips and stuff like that, and also some prizes that they did a drawing on. Brandon brought down a bunch of stuff too that was tackle and bags, so that everybody who was there got something. This was not a tournament. This was just a fun event to learn how to ice fish, or if you had already been in it and was just a beginner and you want to learn a little bit more. And as I said, we had a lot of questions about those depth finders. So I was trying to teach them and at the same time learning that FLX30, because that's the first time I'd used the doggone thing. Just have not been able to do it. But anyway, that was what the day was. And like I said, they're going to be having it again. So if any of you would be interested in becoming a sponsor of it, or maybe participating in the following year's events, whatever, I'll put the phone number down here and put it down here in the description so that you can check back on it. And you can call over there. And like I said, Brad Taylor, he's the guy that's doing it. And or at least he was organizing it then. I don't know if it'll jump over to Brandon or not, but the two of them are working on it, and they put it together. And as I said, we're really happy that he invited us. Vexilar and Jiffy, of course, they're very happy that we were there. And also TTI-Blakemore, Ron Stallings down there, he said he was glad that we were able to attend. And Dylan, he had a ball with it, even though he's a cat fisherman. He's also an ice fisherman. And he had questions, believe it or not, on the catfishing because they knew who he was. So until next time, get out in the water and have a great day of fishing.